Hey everybody, Digi here. So I was just watching the latest Game Maker's Toolkit video called Controllers Control Everything, and it got me thinking about the sort of dichotomy between uh, pure creativity and extreme specificity. Not to say that these things are mutually exclusive, but something I think I might be a little unclear about in a lot of my videos, or that maybe a lot of people don't get, is that I make a distinction sort of between something being specific and something being generic. Here's what I mean. Like, let's say my Asterisk War Sucks series. I complained a lot about how there's too many of these shows that are exactly the same. Too many of these shows that are these light novel adaptations that have the same characters, the same premise, the same ways of going about things. And but the kind of main point I make is really in episode 2 when I'm talking about the fan service and how I don't understand why anyone would bother watching this show unless you specifically wanted to see fan service of a pink-haired girl who was voiced by Ai Kakuma, because that is the only thing that is specific enough to be only in that show. If you wanted a fan service of a character voiced by her, there's other shows. Fan service of pink-haired girls with the same body type, there's other shows for that, and some of those are better, you know? So, like, why does this specific show exist unless it's specifically for that purpose? But I don't dislike shows that are very specific while having a lot in common with other shows. To get to the heart of what I mean, so in this Game Maker's Toolkit video, he was talking about how video games kind of adhere to the controllers that they're made for. So, like, when we have all these DualShock controllers, these dual stick controllers, there's a tendency towards more and more first person shooters because there's a very easily understood control scheme for that matches well with what the controllers are made for, and so it's incentivized to keep making games like that. Whereas coming up with games that have completely unique control schemes requires different types of controllers, which is why so much of what we get on the DS or the Wii or or touchscreen consoles tend to have so many different control schemes. And I love this point the guy's making, and I think, yeah, it's extremely liberating to be free of just using the same controller for everything. And there's a lot of creativity to be explored by opening up those gates and coming up with something completely new. And if I apply this back to anime, I can appreciate something like the works of Mamoru, not Mamoru, what's his name? The fucking dude with the why does this happen? Masaaki Yuasa. Shows like Kaiba that are just like so out there that it's just something completely different from anything you'd get from a typical anime. I think there's a lot of people who put a lot of value into that, into like it being different and like totally new and unique. But I also like finding the weirdly specific elements that we get when people keep making the same show over and over again, but putting that slight twist on it to make it more to their taste, Like, um, I mean, even if we just look at like the classic hero's journey stories, where you could say the hero's journey is just the same thing over and over again, like in a broad sense, the same kind of character arcs, the same kind of meanings, but it's the way it's presented and the textural elements, as I like to call it. A little word I picked up from Film Crit Hulk to just basically mean anything beyond the story. That the texture of the story, the way that it feels, is through all the other artistic elements of it. And so, I watch like a lot of these like high school shows and these typical run of the mill anime because a lot of them have something small that makes it so different and interesting to me. Like, for instance, I just did this video on Shimoneta and or Shimoseka, if you will. Um, but there was a lot of comments on it. Well, not a lot, but like a few comments that were like, "Wow, another high school show." Or like, "Who cares? Why this show?" And I thought it was funny because it's like I watch so much high school anime that doesn't like register with me anymore. The fact that it's a high school that it's like everything else. Like I have to really take a step back before I even notice that kind of thing. What I see when I look at it is all the things that are different, that it's, a dystopian show set in the future, that it's about social commentary and it has all these other elements. And like while the basis of the show is still a high school comedy with like, lots of perverted jokes in it that aren't that different from the ones you would get in any other show, like the context surrounding them is different, and the reasoning behind it is different. And a show like Shimoneta would never happen if not for there already being this culture of these light novels, of these raunchy high school anime comedies. Like if this show was thought up in a void, then it would be something completely different. But instead, it's taking all those existing tropes and then doing a slight variation on them. And I'm always fascinated with that kind of stuff. And it's really when you get to something like Asterisk War, like what bothers me about it is that there's so nothing. Like it's a different level of nothing that I think you can only really appreciate when you do watch so many of these high school shows, when there's so many that you do enjoy. Like, I think a lot of people might have been surprised when I, praised Chivalry of a Failed Knight and gave it like a 6 out of 10 because they were like, well, it's still a cliche show. And I'm like, yeah, but the textural elements are just so much better. There's things to like about it. There's things that make it stand out. You know, I don't think my standards for like things being unique are super duper high because in general, I like everything. I feel like the kind of people who don't like high school anime at all are the kind of people who have 10 anime they actually care about, or who only want like art to be high art or something. It's like, dude, I watch hundreds of shows every year, like I I'm not concerned about only liking the best stuff or only watching the best stuff. Like I want to see everything, but when I'm in the process of watching everything and 10 shows are like the literal exact same, that's when it becomes a problem. So, I feel like when I made the Asterisk War videos, a lot of people were rallying behind it, um, but taking it to mean something more broad than even I was, where they were like, yeah, fuck all these light novel anime. And I'm like, I'm talking about a more specific subset of them that is like so bad, whereas like, I actually like a lot of shows that to other people would just be exactly like it. So I think there's room in this world to go in both directions, to go super out there and make something that's nothing like anything. Like that can be really cool. But I also like it when people just keep remaking things with the slight twists and evolving it until it's something so specific that you almost have to know this whole lineage to get to it. And obviously that won't appeal to everybody. That'll be an incredibly niche thing. But for someone like me, when it comes to like anime where it's gotten so fucking niche, where it's gotten to the point where there's shows that only really make any sense if you have the context of having watched everything that led up to it, those can still be exciting for me. So, yeah, that's the thought I had